Developmental disorder? Yes. The neighbor lady said so. My parents, who had taken in the child of my sister and her husband who had died in a car accident, showed up with that child. What? A former preschool teacher said so, so it must be true. I thought he was a smart kid. So now they don't want him anymore. Am I supposed to take care of him now? Throwing him away just because your expectations were wrong is the worst. I'm the one who will make a place for this child. Only me. My name is Rayla, 41 years old. I work part-time for a company that cleans office buildings and apartments. I live with my husband Tom, who is an office worker, and we don't have children. I wake up in the morning and make lunch, work, have dinner, and sleep. Others might see it as monotonous, but Tom and I don't mind this peaceful routine. Peace is the best, or so I thought. Can you say that again? The company went bankrupt. One more time. So my company went bankrupt. No matter how many times I heard it, I couldn't understand. What does that mean? I'm unemployed. Isn't there something we can do? I wish I knew. Tom bit his lip, looking like he was about to cry. Our beloved peace and life plans were shattered in an instant. We stood there, dazed and hollow, like empty shells. With just my part-time job income, we could barely cover the rent. Tom needs to find a new job right away. But first, we need to apply for unemployment insurance, and as for severance pay, there's no way we'll get that. I should have saved more. My mind was a whirlwind of confusion. At that moment, my mother called. Honestly, she's the last person I want to talk to when I'm feeling weak. Let's just hear what she wants and make it quick. Hello? Rayla? What's up, Mom? Let's go out for steak today. Karen and her family too. Her high-pitched voice rang in my head. My mom sometimes invites us out to eat, assuming we'll pay. Karen is my sister. She and her husband have a child named Lien. He's a friendly 5-year-old boy. Steak. Yes. All you can eat. And Lien eats for free because he's 5. Free for 5-year-olds? What a kind world. So does that mean people laid off due to company closure eat free too? That's not possible. What? It's true, toddlers eat free. Oh, sorry. I was talking to myself. As much as I hate to disappoint her, I can't enjoy a meal out with our finances and my unstable emotions. The steak won't taste good if we're dipping into our retirement savings. I told her about Tom being jobless and declined the invitation. What? Are you guys okay? We're fine, don't worry. You better find a new job quickly. I'm looking forward to that steak. Yeah. I forced a laugh at my mother's unintentional insensitivity. If she really felt bad, she could pay for our meal, couldn't she? She always eats and drinks to her heart's content and expects us to split the bill. I felt exhausted after hanging up. If I'm this affected, Tom must be. My stomach hurts. I have no appetite. He was slumped in the corner of the room. It's serious. I've never seen Tom looking so weak. Of course, he's in no shape to go to an all-you-can-eat. I made the right call to decline. Soon after, Karen called. Hello? Mom told me. You're laid off? Don't say laid off, Dot. Are you okay? We're okay, but it's not that we're struggling. What scares me is that our normal routine has changed. Here's some sisterly advice. How about getting a certification? Now? I'm already 41. You're only 41. You don't know what's ahead, so don't give up before you try. With a certification, you might find a job you really want. Karen's words made me realize something important. I had dropped out of school because of an illness. I'm not exactly satisfied with my current job or salary, but I had given up, blaming it on dropping out. I had believed that no matter how hard I worked, I would only be able to support Tom, but maybe that was just an excuse.
You're right. I'll think about it.
Yeah. Do your best.
Thank you, Karen.
The overwhelming anxiety I had felt started to turn into a glimmer of hope. I'll try my best, one step at a time. First, I should take care of Tom. I'll make him meals that are easy on the stomach and let him rest. I'll make sure to keep living normally so that he doesn't get more stressed or fall into negative thoughts. Despite my efforts, Tom's job search isn't going well. He fails all the interviews, and his fatigue and frustration are building up. When he sees me going to my part-time job as usual, he grumbles. It must be nice to be needed by society and have a place to belong. I pretended not to hear and wished for peaceful days to return soon. Then one day, something unbelievable happened. My sister and her husband died in an accident. A car ran into the line of people waiting for a bus. My nephew Lien, who was with them, only got some scratches, but they weren't so lucky. The thought of them leaving their son behind and going to heaven squeezes my heart. I can't believe it. I don't want to believe it. We had just talked on the phone the other day. The funeral proceeded before I could even process my feelings. Poor Lien, who lost his parents, might not understand the situation, but he quietly reads picture books or plays with toys alone. I stayed by Lien's side as much as possible. I'm sure Karen would have been worried. Lien needs no care at all. For a 5-year-old boy, it's normal to run around and make noise, but he quietly plays alone all the time. Seeing how good he is only makes my heart ache more. We'll take Lien in, my mother said after everything was over. We'll raise our grandson properly. Lien, don't worry, my father assured, so I felt relieved to leave him in their care. If it was a choice between a foster home and taking him in ourselves, I would have discussed it with Tom, but it seemed unnecessary. Besides, it would be irresponsible for an unemployed Tom and a part-timer like me to raise Lien. It's been a long time since we've had a child to raise, my mother said excitedly. I'll help too. Call me anytime you need a break. Lien, let's play again soon, I said, patting Lien's head, but he didn't smile. He didn't cry or seem lonely either. Maybe he still didn't understand reality. I waved goodbye, but Lien didn't look back. A week later. Remembering Karen still hurts and makes me sad, but I can't stay down forever. I need to change my mindset. I have time off from my part-time job until today. After seeing Tom off to his interview and cleaning the house, my parents and Lien arrived. Why are you here all of a sudden? Did you come to visit? Contrary to my welcoming smile, my parents looked serious. Lien stood behind them. The atmosphere was unusual. Something must have happened. I invited them in, but Lien wouldn't come past the entrance. Did something happen? It's fine. Just ignore that child. What? We thought he was a smart kid, but we were fooled. My parents started talking in an irritated manner. They said it was troublesome because he was picky about food. Ignoring even though he can hear, or suddenly leaving the house without a word, it just doesn't make sense. It's eerie how he can play with the same toy for hours, my parents said with a pained expression. When they consulted a neighbor friend who used to be a preschool teacher, they were told he might have a developmental disorder. Now that I think about it, Lien has trouble with group activities, so I'm worried he might be feeling isolated at the child care center, Karen also mentioned. Such a strange kid, no, a difficult one. I can't handle him. That's Lian's personality, isn't it? He's not even moving from the entrance. He's just staring at the floor. Such a weird kid. I think it's normal for a child to be cautious in a new place. You don't need to force him. What would you know, Rayla? You don't have kids.
My mother becomes hysterical.
He's weird because his development is delayed. Stop it. That's not certain yet. What would you know, Rayla? You don't have kids. I heard you the first time. Saying that just leaves me with nothing to say. We took him in because he's a quiet and smart grandchild, and we thought we could send him to a good college. What? That way, we'd be secure in our old age. This is a betrayal.
I was stunned. They took him in not for his sake, but for their own.
Our eldest daughter died before us, and the second one dropped out. We raised them so well, and they ended up as failures. We wanted a do-over with our grandchild, but it's ruined.
What did she just say? Failures? Who? Karen and I? My blood ran cold.
We can't handle him anymore, so Rayla, you take him.
My mother says something even more outrageous. My father nods in agreement beside her.
What are you talking about? It's not that simple. It's okay. I give my permission.
I give mine too.
Why do I need your permission? You've been telling me I'm childless this whole time. You're a dropout, a cleaner, childless, with no future. Giving you this chance makes me a good mother, right? How dare you? Think positively. Unemployed, dropout, developmental disorder. Only room for growth, right?
There are things a parent should and shouldn't say. This can't be brushed off as a joke. Taking in a grandchild with selfish expectations and then giving up when it's inconvenient is too cruel. I can imagine the frustrated faces of my sister and her husband, who are no longer here.
Fine. I'll take him. Oh, really? Mom, Dad, you're not involved anymore. I'll contact you only when necessary for paperwork. Then, we'll leave Lian here. I'll send all his things and photo albums. Just go already.
I struggled to contain my anger. After my parents left, I sat at the entrance with Lian, who was talking to his stuffed animal. Lian did nothing wrong, yet his normal life was taken away, and he was betrayed by adults he trusted. How lonely he must feel. I want to be a place where he can feel safe. I don't know anything about parenting or developmental issues, but I'll study hard from now on. Where did Grandpa and Grandma go?
It's okay, Lian. Stay with me.
Okay. At that moment, the front door, which I was sure I had locked, opened, and Tom walked in. Hey, I'm back. The interview's over. I'm exhausted. Tom looked at me and Lian, sitting by the entrance, and tilted his head in confusion. I explained the situation and apologized for taking Lian in without any consultation. Tom looked displeased. Of course he did. A decision this big shouldn't be made alone. I hadn't even mentioned that I was considering taking Lian in, so it must have been unexpected for Tom. I'm sorry. I had no choice. I'm really sorry. But Tom's feelings were different.
No need to apologize. If we hadn't taken him in, I might have been angry. What I can't forgive are your parents. What do they think children are?
After saying that, Tom picked up Lian.
But I'm grateful. I'm so happy to live with adorable Lian.
Tom rubbed his cheek against Lian's with a big smile and said,
Looking forward to being with you.
Lien giggled, maybe because it tickled. Watching them both so happy made me happy too. But there's a problem. We are both unemployed and dropped out of school, which is a very unstable situation. Reality is harsh. Tom said today's interview was an immediate rejection. This means we can't responsibly raise a child. It's extremely bad.
Hey! How about we all go live with my parents in the countryside?
Tom said, as if he had a bright idea. Tom's family home is in the mountains. I've only been there once. We took a plane and several trains to get there. The place was beautiful, with a river where fireflies danced and clean, refreshing air. I remember talking about how it would be nice to come back here and live quietly when we got older. We don't know when we'll find new jobs, and I don't want to be involved with my parents. The timing is now. I quit my job, canceled the apartment lease, completed the adoption process, and moved. I told my parents that we were going to Tom's family home, but they didn't seem to care and said nothing in particular. Tom's parents and his brother's family welcomed us suddenly showing up at their house. I was prepared for strict words as their daughter-in-law, but I quickly fit in without any problems. Lien was scared, saying Tom's big, old family home was like a haunted house, but he easily went inside when the brothers' children invited him to play games. Kids become friends quickly, it's amazing. They ran around the house, and everyone got scolded together. Dinner was lively with the older kids fighting over meat. Lien, either excited or tired, had a fever after his bath and went to bed early. One by one, people came quietly to check on him. They brought toys, stuffed animals, and fruits out of concern. Lien, drowsy while I lay beside him, said,
I want to come here again tomorrow.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's stay here forever. Mom and Dad can't come?
Yeah. I thought so. But it's okay.
I couldn't say anything more. As I slowly petted his head, he soon fell asleep. Seeing his peaceful sleeping face, I made up my mind. 20 years have passed since then. Today, I am attending Lien's wedding as his mother. His partner is someone I know well. A girl from the neighborhood who was in the student council with him in middle school. The ceremony looks to be a friendly one, with the parents knowing each other for years.
20 years felt long, but also flew by in no time.
Yeah. Tom nodded thoughtfully beside me. The white shirt clung to his sunburned, muscular skin. Since then, Tom started working at a construction company through his brother's introduction and was shocked at how weak he felt, unable to handle physical labor. He dedicated himself to weight training to be able to lift the increasingly heavy Lien. Before he knew it, he had become muscular. Now, he can easily carry sandbags or rebar without any trouble. Lien, now fully grown, is surrounded by many relatives and friends, smiling shyly. I'm sure my sister and her husband are watching the splendid Lien from heaven. As the ceremony was about to start, I was called by the venue staff and found an unexpected guest there. Mom. My mother, whom I hadn't seen in a long time, was wearing a flashy dress, her hair a mess, yelling at the staff. My father, who had lost most of his hair, was with her. It seemed they were causing a scene, insisting that as grandparents, they should be allowed to attend the wedding even without an invitation. As expected, I had anticipated my parents would come uninvited to Lien's now famous wedding. So I had asked the venue staff to check the attendees.
Rayla, what's with these rude staff? Do something about it. Coming all this way just to be treated like this? This is ridiculous.
They came uninvited and made a fuss. What a nuisance. Who are you people again?
Huh?
Please leave if you're not invited.
What? Have you forgotten the parents who raised you? You're the ones who abandoned your grandchild. Abandoned? What are you talking about? We had no choice but to leave Lien with you. What? And because of that, Lien became famous, didn't he? We did the right thing.
Yes, Lien did become famous. Lien, who had come to love the countryside since that day, entered elementary school and attended happily every day. The class was small due to the low number of children in the area, which was a blessing for Lien, who disliked crowds. It allowed him to focus on his studies. Eventually, he dreamed of contributing to the community and studied agricultural engineering in college. He connected the latest in smart farming using robotics and information technology with local producers, and organized short-term lodging tours during harvest season to attract city youth. This was featured on local television and gained national attention. Not anyone else's. It was all thanks to Lien's hard work. I couldn't stand my mother acting like it was her accomplishment.
He's my grandchild. Of course, I knew he'd grow up to be great. Stop saying things that are convenient for you. By the way, did you manage to overcome the developmental issues?
After that, I studied child development. Development is just individuality. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses, likes and dislikes. Lien was just a bit more noticeable in these areas. Nowadays, schools and local government provide extensive care and tailored support. When Lien was in elementary school, he took a developmental test at the teacher's recommendation. It turned out he had no issues. He was just anxious from the sudden loss of his parents and drastic changes in his environment. He was simply a bit shy and clingy.
Mom, who was it that said Lien might have a developmental disorder?
It was a former nursery teacher in the neighborhood. Someone named Betty.
I knew it. That person only worked part-time in the child care center's kitchen. What? She must have made a casual, baseless assumption. Unbelievable. Betty was so terrible. Stop blaming others. The fault lies with you, Mom. Rayla, who do you think you're talking to?
My mother, her face red with anger.
How did you even know today was the wedding day? I saw Lien talking about the upcoming wedding in a TV interview. I called around to the wedding venues in the area and told them I was her grandmother, and they told me.
You think you have the right to call yourself her grandmother? I can't believe you would do something so deceitful without a second thought. Just then, Tom showed up, worried that I had been gone too long. He seemed surprised to see my parents there, but quickly understood the situation.
Nancy, Bob, it's been a while.
Oh, it's been so long.
We came all this way to celebrate Lien's wedding. Let us join the festivities.
No, there are no seats available.
Make it work somehow.
That's difficult.
Do you know who I am?
My parents seemed to think Tom's mild-mannered nature would work in their favor and took a firm stance.
The staff can figure out the seating. Just let us in for now.
I'm afraid that's not possible.
We just want to see Lien.
I'm sorry, but no. My father's frustration began to grow, his tone getting louder.
Enough is enough. We traveled hours to get to this godforsaken place. Show us in immediately.
He started pressuring the staff, not just Tom and me.
Don't you understand what I'm saying? Is this rural place too backward to comprehend?
I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just as I stepped forward to stop my father, the buttons on Tom's shirt popped off and hit my father's head. Tom's muscles must have been too much for the shirt.
Am I shot?
My father instinctively touched his forehead.
Stop it! Don't shoot me!
He looked terrified.
Doing this won't help. We're not leaving until we see our precious grandchild.
At that moment, Lien, the star of the day, appeared.
What's going on with all the noise?
My parents' faces lit up instantly.
You've grown so much.
Doesn't he look just like me?
Really? Let me get a good look at you.
I felt nothing but disgust for these two and their selfish remarks. Lien looked at me, pleading for help.
Who are these people again? What?
Unlike my sarcastic remark earlier, Lien genuinely didn't know. Of course not. Lien, as a child, had always looked down after losing her parents. It made sense he wouldn't remember their faces.
Did you forget? I'm your grandma.
And I'm your grandpa. We came to see you.
This rural place must have been inconvenient, right? After the wedding, let's go back to the city together. And of course, bring your wife.
I had reached my limit. I couldn't stop shaking with anger. I won't let them say whatever they wanted anymore.
Enough is enough.
Just as I said that, Lien burst out laughing.
Sorry, but you must be mistaken. You might not remember, but...
No, you're mistaken. Lien's firm declaration made my parents flinch.
Grandparents who make my mom look like this are neither needed now nor ever.
Lien, who always called me by my name, called me Mom. I was on the verge of tears.
I grew up here, studied here, and work here. I'm very content. It's not inconvenient at all. So, you don't plan on leaving? That's right. Then what about us?
We're offering to live with us now that you're all grown up.
No matter what you say, it's my life.
That day, Lien, who had been sitting quietly at the entrance, is now clearly expressing his opinion. Nothing could make me happier.
What's wrong with you? You're such a strange kid. You don't understand anything.
You're all pretty strange too.
What? Expecting to be allowed into a wedding you weren't invited to is really rude. What?
Mom, Dad, it's time. Let's just leave these people alone and go. My nephew, no, my son walks towards the bride. When did his back become so broad? We can hear my parents yelling, but of course, no one looks back. Let's leave it to the venue staff to send them away. After that, Lien successfully finished the wedding and went on his honeymoon. They could have gone to a resort abroad, but they chose a nearby spa. They also wanted to connect with local farmers and make it part of their work. I think they should forget about work during their honeymoon, but for Lien, it's their passion and something they don't want to separate from their daily life. In the past, I wouldn't have understood that, but now I kind of get it. After settling down here, I remembered Karen's advice and aimed to get certified. I got a job at a nursing home that focuses on training staff and studied hard. I gained practical experience and was able to get certified as a care manager. Now I'm in charge of a section at the facility. It's tough but rewarding work. I can even use my experience as a cleaner. Now, even if Tom loses his job, I can say, leave it to me. I don't know what happened to my parents after that. They called Tom's parents' house asking for my contact information, but every time they called, no matter who answered, they were met with "Who is this?" like it was a secret code, so they stopped calling. After 20 years, it's too late to come back as if nothing happened. That gossip Betty in the neighborhood spreads rumors about her grandchild having a developmental disorder. My parents, who don't even have a single photo of Lien, would be thought to be making up stories if they tried to brag about their famous grandson. The grandchild you denied no longer exists anywhere. The only one here is the honest and kind Lien that I raised. Looking up at the sky, I see the relieved smiles of my sister and her husband. Mary handed me the letter she had read at the wedding reception.
I wasn't so dense that I couldn't read the room and make a joke at a time like this. I needed to say something serious to Mary.
Mary, thank you for being born. I'm sure you wanted to show this to Dad too.
Mary's personality had completely changed after my husband, Tom, disappeared 15 years ago. Until then, she had been a bright and curious child, but she became timid and withdrawn. It must have had something to do with her father's disappearance. When Mary heard my words, she suddenly broke down in tears. I thought she was just overwhelmed with emotion, but something seemed off. She grabbed my hand while crying. Her grip was strong enough to leave a bruise.
Mom, I'm sorry. There's something I've been keeping from you.
I had a bad feeling about this.
Dad was betraying us.
There was a clear look of hatred in her eyes. I felt the color drain from my face.
What do you mean?
I hurried home and desperately dug up the spot Mary had specified. The shovel hit something. There was a cookie tin buried in the dirt. I shouldn't open this. A sudden fear gripped me. But I couldn't let Mary carry this burden alone. Don't turn away from the truth, I told myself as I opened the tin. Our meeting came suddenly. It happened in the spring when I was 28.
Sarah, this is Tom, the new employee.
The young man introduced by my manager, Lien, greeted me.
Teach him the ropes starting today.
With that, Lien quickly headed to the conference room.
I'm Sarah. I'll start by teaching you the basics. If there's anything you don't understand, just ask.
He kept staring at the name tag on my chest.
Are you listening? It was Tom, right?
Just as I was about to scold him, he flashed me a friendly smile and said something outrageous.
Sarah, what a beautiful name.
I was taken aback, not expecting to hear something like that from a new employee I had just met, who was also 10 years younger than me.
I'm sorry. I guess I said something embarrassing, didn't I?
He said, looking more embarrassed than I felt as he sat down at the desk next to mine. When I glanced at his profile, I noticed his ears were bright red. Maybe he wasn't a bad person after all. However, I couldn't help but feel uneasy that his first words to me, his supposed mentor, were those. Would he actually do his job properly? Perhaps it would be best to teach him about his attitude towards his senior colleagues. But my worries turned out to be unfounded. Tom quickly learned everything I taught him, and his friendly personality proved effective in winning over the sales team. He was so dedicated to his work that before I knew it, I had come to recognize Tom's abilities. And a year later, when Tom landed a big contract on his own, we decided to celebrate together over dinner.
It's all thanks to your great teaching, Sarah. You don't let your achievements go to your head at all.
Although my first impression of him wasn't the best, by that time I had grown comfortable being around Tom.
But now that you've become so capable at your job, you're definitely going to get even busier.
He would surely surpass me in no time. Tom reacted to my voice, which was so soft that I couldn't tell if he heard me or not, as I felt a sense of loneliness.
Even if that happens, will you still go out to eat with me from time to time like this?
The redness in Tom's ears wasn't just from the alcohol. Somehow, I had a premonition. But I couldn't give a straight answer to Tom's feelings, who was 10 years younger than me.
By then, you'll be going out drinking with more important people, not me.
I tried to brush it off, but Tom's eyes were serious.
Sarah, I'm serious.
Tom leaned forward. After a few seconds of staring into each other's eyes, I nodded. It wasn't that I was swept away by Tom's momentum. Somewhere inside, I was also drawn to Tom. Tom, the man who would later become my husband. We continued dating steadily, and we got married when I turned 30. After that, we were blessed with a daughter, and the three of us lived a happy life. Yes, that's how it was supposed to be. I'll never forget, it was the spring when Mary was 5 years old. After putting Mary on the kindergarten shuttle bus, I was chatting with a fellow mom from the neighborhood when my cell phone rang.
Hello, Sarah?
It was a call from Lien, my former boss, whom I hadn't seen since I quit my job before Mary was born, except in Tom's stories.
Lien, it's been a while. Tom is always grateful for your guidance.
Lien interrupted my greeting and asked me a question.
I'm glad you sound well. By the way, I can't get in touch with Tom. Do you know anything about that?
What? Tom was supposed to be on a business trip to Hong Kong since 3 days ago. According to Lien, there was no business trip, and Tom hadn't come to work since Monday of this week.
Anyway, try to contact him from your end too, Sarah.
With that, Lien hung up the phone. Recently, Tom had been complaining about the increase in business trips. Each time, I would console and encourage him.
Talking to you really puts my mind at ease, Sarah. It's like being enveloped in warmth. Thank you, always,
he would say. We had even gotten excited together about this long business trip, saying it was because he was highly regarded and sure to get a promotion. On Monday, Tom had taken a day off to pack for the business trip starting the next day. Where on earth had he gone? After hanging up with Lien, I ended my gossip session and went home to try calling Tom's cell phone. But it seemed to be turned off. This had never happened before, where I couldn't get in touch with Tom. Could he have been involved in an accident or incident somewhere? Suddenly overcome with anxiety, I called every contact I had on my cell phone. Tom's parents' house, his siblings, every friend I knew of. But no one knew of Tom's whereabouts. From then on, days so painful that I don't even want to remember them continued. At the suggestion of my in-laws, I filed a missing person report for Tom, but no leads turned up at all. I swallowed my shame, asked Lien, and returned to my old workplace, working as if to fill the hole Tom had left. But at the same time, Mary's smiles started to decrease. Even with reduced working hours, it was a completely different life than before. From Mary's perspective, her father had disappeared, and even the time she spent with her mother had decreased. I understood Mary's loneliness all too painfully, but we had to overcome it together. For my part, I felt uncomfortable being treated as a pitiful woman who had been abandoned by her husband and was now cleaning up his mess at work. Only my longtime colleagues treated me normally, but I could see sympathy in the depths of their eyes. I felt like I was being pushed to the brink mentally, but I gritted my teeth. In front of Mary, I tried to act as cheerful as possible, so as not to let her feel any anxiety or loneliness. And I wanted to give Mary a life where she lacked for nothing. That was my sole focus. When Mary entered elementary school and we had gotten used to life with just the two of us, I made a certain request to my manager.
As long as it's not too much for you, Sarah.
Lien was probably worried about me, but at the time, I had lost faith in everyone, so I could only thank him formally. And so I started an online shop as a side job. Has it really been 15 years since then? I muttered to myself while gazing at the cherry blossoms starting to bloom.
Mom? What's wrong?
Mary, who had been walking ahead of me, turned around. The image of Mary in my memories overlapped with her current appearance.
Don't tell me you're still nervous, Mom?
Mary laughed mischievously. Of course not. I wasn't nervous from the start. I joked back, and we walked side by side, laughing. Today was a family meeting with Mary and her fiancé's family. Mary, now fully grown, had met her fiancé at the city hall where she started working after graduating from college.
If you were going to go to college and work as a public servant anyway, You could have waited a little longer to get married.
Mary was only 23 years old. I had accidentally muttered this on the day she first introduced him to me, but Mary said, "You married Dad on instinct too, didn't you, Mom?" It dredged up unpleasant memories from my past and left me with complicated feelings, but she was right. No matter who says what, I am going to marry this person. Mary's personality of charging straight ahead once she made a decision was definitely something she got from me. If it seems like it's not working out, hurry back home, okay? That's not going to happen. We enjoyed having conversations like that over and over until the wedding day. And a few months later, Mary's wedding took place. I watched from a distant seat as Mary received countless words of blessing. As the reception was coming to an end, it was time for the bride to read a letter. I had told Mary that I didn't want her to do it because it was embarrassing. Mary had also said she wouldn't do it. I couldn't show tears in front of so many people. No matter how much sympathy or comfort I received after Tom disappeared, I had managed not to cry in front of others until now. I was determined to play the role of a strong mother who wouldn't cry no matter what, until the very end. With that resolve in my heart, I took the stage as prompted. To my beloved Mom. Mary began reading the letter. Starting from the days when Tom was still with us, to the loneliness she felt when the time she spent with me decreased after Tom's disappearance. How she eventually started helping out a lot, wanting to support me as I threw myself into work, and her rebellious phase during her teenage years. Her gratitude for being able to live a life without any hardships through high school and college. All the events written in the letter, and even more so, the ordinary days we spent together felt like they had happened just yesterday. I absolutely wouldn't cry. I thought I would catch Mary's eye and laugh together like always, but at that moment, Mary's voice stopped. I looked over at Mary and saw her crying, dressed in a beautiful gown. Seeing her like that again, she looked so beautiful, almost like a different person. Mary, who was always young and forever a child in my mind. But once this day ends, a different life from before will begin. When did she become such a lovely and wonderful woman? I could vividly remember everything until now, but Mary, crying as she read the letter to me, seemed to have gone to a place beyond my reach. Suddenly, tears spilled from my eyes. And they kept flowing, one after another. They were tears of pride for Mary, who had become an adult, wishing for her eternal happiness, mixed with the loneliness that would likely come from being on my own from now on. After the reception ended, I headed to the bride's waiting room. Mary, who had been resting for a bit, ran over to me. "I can't believe you cried, Mom." We had lived together until now, but no matter how painful it was, I had never shown tears in front of Mary. Mary seemed surprised that I, who was like that, had cried.
I told you not to read any letters.
To hide my embarrassment, I pretended to be angry on purpose. But Mary, who would usually play along with me at times like this, had a solemn expression on her face. And Mary handed me the letter she had read at the reception. I wasn't so dense that I couldn't read the room and make a joke at a time like this. I needed to say something serious to Mary.
Mary, thank you for being born. Your dad would have wanted to see this too.
Mary's personality had completely changed after Tom disappeared. Until then, she had been a bright and curious child, but she became timid and withdrawn. It must have had something to do with her father's disappearance. She started wondering if she was an unwanted child, if her father had disappeared because of her. To avoid being seen as unwanted or unnecessary, she began to gauge people's reactions and moods first. After I noticed this, I showered Mary with love so she wouldn't feel anxious, and by the time she became an adult, she had returned to being a cheerful child, but today was a special day for Mary, and I didn't want her to have a gloomy face on a day like this, nor did I want to let that happen. And I wanted her to look to the future rather than being trapped in the past. Having Mary born was the greatest happiness for me too. The father in Mary's memories must have been eagerly awaiting this day as well. That was the one thing I absolutely had to convey to her. However, when Mary heard my words, she suddenly broke down in tears. I thought she was just overwhelmed with emotion, but something seemed off. She grabbed my hand while crying. Her grip was strong enough to leave a bruise. "Mom, I'm sorry. There's something I've been keeping from you." I had a bad feeling about this. I didn't want to hear what she had to say next. But my wish was not granted. Mary slowly spoke the truth. "Dad was betraying us." There was a clear look of hatred in her eyes. I felt the color drain from my face. "What do you mean?" Even if that were true, how did Mary know about it? Of course, Mary also understood that Tom had disappeared, but even I didn't know where he had gone or why he had disappeared. "I had been debating when to tell you for a long time. But I didn't want you to find out that secret alone after I left." Apparently, that secret was buried in the flower bed in our backyard. "I'm sorry for not being able to tell you until today." At that moment, the groom entered the waiting room after finishing changing his clothes. He looked surprised to see Mary crying in anguish, feeling sorry for me. "I understand. It's all right." After briefly explaining the situation to him and entrusting Mary to his care, I dashed out of the room. It was a 20-minute drive from the hotel where the wedding was held to our house. Without worrying about my appearance, I ran to the parking lot and jumped into the car. The car's speed felt slower than usual. I tried to calm myself down many times as I grew irritated, but it didn't work. Even after getting out of the car, I kept running until I reached the house. Despite already being out of breath, I desperately dug up the spot Mary had specified without taking a break. The shovel hit something. A cookie tin was buried in the soil. I shouldn't open this. I suddenly felt frightened. But I couldn't let Mary bear this burden alone. Don't look away from the truth. Telling myself that, I opened the tin. Inside were several photos. They showed Tom with a woman wearing glamorous makeup. As I looked through them one by one, photos of the two entangled in a lewd manner appeared. I involuntarily averted my eyes. Was this the reason Mary had said Tom disappeared? For a while, I couldn't move, crouched in the garden. Why in the world would he have something like this? The night wind, still cold, enveloped me. The next day, I asked Mary, who had returned home, for the truth. I found them in Dad's desk. That desk we had kept in the house for a while after Tom disappeared. I had also thoroughly searched it for any clues. "I searched that desk too." Still shaken, my tone sounded somewhat accusatory towards Mary. Mary explained the situation with an apologetic look on her face. When Tom disappeared, she saw me searching through his desk and became convinced there must be something there. She didn't know what it was, but she desperately searched through the desk. And in the back of the bottom drawer, she found an envelope. "I thought if I had that, I could help you, Mom." When Mary opened the envelope, those photos came out. Young as she was, Mary couldn't understand what they were doing in the photos, but she said it made her feel awful. Feeling that she shouldn't show these photos to me, she hid them in a cookie tin where she kept her toys. "I had intended to keep it hidden from you forever, Mom, but I was worried about what would happen if you found it on your own after I left." It was too big a worry for a child to bear alone. To think that Mary had been hiding this all along. I thought I had been protecting Mary, but it was the opposite. Was I the one being protected by Mary? "I'm sorry. Mary." I was at a loss for words. At the same time as I felt sorry for Mary, anger towards Tom welled up inside me. How could he leave such cruel evidence to the family he abandoned? Anger surged through me at Tom's irresponsibility. Nothing will come from letting my emotions take over with anger. No, in this case, I should properly put an end to it. I took the photos and headed to a detective agency. I had gone through so much trouble trying to find Tom's whereabouts. But based on those photos, the detectives were able to track down Tom's location with ease. From the building in the photo, they found a high-rise apartment towering in front of a certain station, staked it out, and confirmed Tom and the woman coming and going. They even pinpointed the room number for me. They said the couple often used food delivery services, so I decided to disguise myself as a delivery person and enter the apartment building. When I rang the intercom for the autolock, I heard a familiar voice. After giving the name of the delivery company, the automatic door opened with a "come in." The elevator kept ascending to the upper floors. My heart was pounding and I felt nauseous. If I was going to turn back, there was still time. I asked myself over and over, but I made my way to the door of the room where Tom and the woman were supposed to be. With trembling hands, I pressed the doorbell. I readjusted my mask and pulled my hat down low. "Yes?" I heard that familiar voice again. "Delivery." I was so nervous I misspoke without thinking. What delivery? They'd definitely be suspicious. But I couldn't say anything more. What should I do? Just as I thought about running away, I heard the sound of the front door being unlocked. Did Betty order something? I could never forget the face that appeared from behind the door. My memories were only from when he was in his 20s, but the man who came out was undoubtedly my husband, Tom. He was giving me that same friendly smile as back then. Ah. A sound slipped out, but Tom didn't seem to notice yet. Huh? Where's the delivery? Tom checked around me, as I only had a shoulder bag. Then, "What? What's wrong, Tom?" From behind Tom, a nearly half-naked woman poked her head out. It was her. Betty, 49 years old. Apparently, her family was wealthy, and she was living a celebrity lifestyle here. I recalled the information I had learned from the detectives. She was the woman who had been supporting Tom since his disappearance. Seeing the woman's face, I regained my composure and anger. I took off my mask and hat and stated my name to the two of them, who were stunned. "I'm Sarah. The wife of Tom over there." After staring at my face for a while, Tom let out a surprised cry. "Ah!" and fled into the back of the room. "Oh my!" As I watched Tom's retreating figure, Betty stood in front of me, blocking my way. "How dare you claim to be the wife of a man you haven't seen in years?" Betty crossed her arms, a confident smile on her face. But I couldn't back down here. I should be the one saying that. "It seems my husband has been in your care all this time," I said with a laugh. Betty then stared at me from head to toe without saying anything. "Can you explain what's been going on?" When I asked, as if to shake off her gaze, she told me a story similar to what I had heard from the detectives. One time, when Tom was at a bar on a business trip, Betty took a liking to him and brought him to this apartment, which was also her villa. After that, Tom returned to the house where Mary and I were waiting and went about his daily life as if nothing had happened, but he started frequently visiting Betty. Eventually, captivated by Betty's wealth and the time he was spoiled, he had been here since leaving us that day. Betty gave Tom a luxurious life without having to work and had spoiled him rotten. Indeed, Tom, who ran away at the sight of me, was like a puppy. He was no longer the dignified and responsible Tom of those days. "So, did you come to get Tom back?" Watching Betty talk without any shame irritated me. I wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. I decided to convey only the main points to Betty. No, I don't need him anymore at this point. There's just one last thing I want to do as his wife. Betty tilted her head. I'll be claiming compensation from my husband Tom, and you, Betty. Betty nodded without changing her expression. How much? I'll give you whatever amount you desire. She provoked me with an upward glance, but the moment she heard my next words, Betty turned pale. I'm sorry. I'll have to consult with your husband about this. Leaving those words behind, I left the place. I knew from the detective agency's investigation that Betty had a husband. Apparently, it was a political marriage with Betty, but if this got out, it would be a big problem. It was unknown how much impact this fact would have on Betty, but surprisingly, the effect was outstanding. Don't tell my husband! Betty's scream echoed through the hallway. But I headed towards the elevator without looking back. Betty, who was almost half naked, didn't chase after me so far as to rush out into the hallway. Inside the elevator heading to the ground floor, I let out a deep breath. And when I went outside, I stretched grandly. Ah. That felt great. People on the street were looking at me, but I couldn't care less. Looking up at the clear blue sky, I headed to Mary's new home. Through a lawyer, I was able to dissolve my marriage with Tom. Of course, I demanded compensation from Tom and Betty. Betty's husband and parents chose to cut ties with her, apparently. Despite being married as the daughter of a good family, she had been seducing a younger man using her parents' assets. If word of this got out, it would be detrimental to their family business, as they were a prominent family. Although Betty had shown confidence in paying the amount of compensation I desired, more than the amount ordered in court had been transferred to me. Surely, money had moved not only to me but to other places as well. And Tom, who was abandoned by Betty after she was cut off from her family and husband, was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared again, even though he still had compensation payments to make to me. But I had no desire to know his whereabouts. Mom, is this everything we need to dispose of? Mary was carrying luggage out of the room. She was helping me as I had decided to let go of this house, which was too big for one person, and move. That's right. Shall we take a little break? We chatted while drinking iced tea together. You know, Mom. There's something else I've been hiding. I nearly spit out my iced tea. I don't need any more of that. But Mary's face was serene, and her hand was placed on her belly. Could it be? Yes, a new life was growing in Mary's belly. And there's one more thing. I saw Dad the other day. Mary began to speak matter-of-factly. Apparently, she had seen him walking around in a shabby state while on a trip with her husband. It was a place that took 3 hours by car from here. He must be struggling. But I didn't feel like I wanted to help him. Rather, I couldn't believe that person was my dad. The Tom in Mary's memories must be shining. As if to shake off that topic, I stood up. That's the end of that story. Back to cleaning. Mary, throw out everything you don't need. If only memories and recollections could be discarded if they weren't needed. With those thoughts, I continued cleaning the room. And then, 2 years passed. Mary and her family came to visit this house where I now lived, doubling as my office. You seem to be thriving as always, Grandma. My tottering granddaughter walked towards me with outstretched hands. And I remembered when Mary was little. Dark memories immediately resurfaced, but I brushed them aside. Something far more important than painful memories from the past was right in front of me now. There was no time to dwell on unnecessary things. After all, from now on, I still had to make many fun and bright memories.